take the proposition, there is a God, there is not a God. There's a reason why the definition of atheism is, I don't believe proposition 1, and the definition of atheism is not, I believe proposition 2. The lack of evidence supporting there is a God, and the amount of evidence that supports the idea that there is a God may actually be a false claim, is not evidence for the position there is no God. Okay? There's a reason why atheism is defined as a lack of belief in a God and not a belief that there is no God. And in the case of life after death, it's exactly the same thing. There is life after death versus there is not life after death. If in Proposition 1 there is life after death, you need to actually support that with evidence. But the lack of evidence, or even circumstantial evidence that it might be false, is not evidence in favor of the proposition that there is no life after death.
Okay, granted. And you're right. If there's a third option, or fourth, fifth, sixth, any number of other options, but I kind of think it's different, because whether there is a God, once you get a definition of the God, if you say exists or doesn't exist, you are in the realm of it's an either-or proposition and not, well, there might be this God, there might be that God, there might be the other God, or there might be no gods.
You can do that for the existence of anything. A exists, A does not exist. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about God or afterlife.
But if those are the two sides, Matt, right? If it is an either-or proposition, which is not the case when it's atheism, right? Because there's a lot of different possible gods. If it's an either-or proposition, evidence against one of the two things is evidence in favor of the other thing. If it's really an either-or.
No.
It's only not an either-or when there's a third and other options.
No. There's Proposition 1.
I don't think we should have decided that we're going to take as long as it takes.
I mean, this is... I don't understand where the disconnect is, because this is not only... this is basic, and why we have definitions the way we do, and why we structure logical arguments. There's two propositions. A exists, and A does not exist. You can have you can have a complete lack of evidence for Proposition 1. A exists. There's no evidence that A exists. Every claim that we find that of somebody saying A exists, we discover it's false. But that does not count as evidence towards...
But you said there is at least some circumstantial evidence that A does not exist.
Yes.
You said. And if it's an either-or proposition, that freaking counts. It counts. Why would it not?
It's... all right. The two propositions, A exists and A does not exist, they're completely separate. Until you actually can disprove A, you haven't proven Proposition B.
I'm not talking about proof. We're talking about whether there's any evidence at all, whether it's absolutely equal. That was your claim.
No.
If the evidence is not absolutely equal, then your claim is not accurate.
Okay. The thing is about positive evidence for a claim. Negative evidence against one claim is not necessarily positive evidence for an alternate claim.
I don't care if it is or not. To me,
that's important.
But yes, fair enough, Matt. It's important. But when the claim is that the evidence for the two things, the either-or proposition where there's exactly only two mutually exclusive answers, right? When there is negative evidence for one, No, but you said that there was.
No.
You did agree that there was.
No, the thing that I've been saying all along is that the two propositions, A exists, A
I
does
should
not
remind
exist.
you, this is going out over the airwaves.
I know, and we can listen to the recording later, and I'm sure there's
not
been
airwaves,
some
you know what I mean.
I'm sure there's been some confusion.
Okay.
A exists, A does not exist. There's a third possibility in all of them, and that is that we have no evidence for either of those propositions. You don't have positive evidence that A exists, and you don't have positive evidence that A does not exist. All you have is more negative evidence against A existing than negative evidence against A not existing. And while I've agreed from the get-go that the default position is that A does not exist until there's sufficient evidence for it, that's the default position, and that the bulk of evidence is negative evidence against the proposition that A exists. The case is that you don't have positive evidence for either of those cases, because we cannot know what happens after death. In much the same way that you cannot disprove God in any proposition. It's the exact same reason that we define atheism as a lack of belief and not a belief in the lack of a God. Or the absence of a God.
Anyway, boy, I have more to say, but if we keep going, it
just keeps going.
This could keep going. I gotta say, I can't help myself. I've gotta say, it is not correct to say that the third option is we don't have any evidence for either one.
So you therefore believe no God exists.
I'm not talking about belief. Let's take what you said, right, which was about life after death, and bring it over to the God question, right? We got two competing propositions. There is a God. There isn't a God, right? Right. All possible things that could be called a God fall under the definition of God in the "there's a God" proposition. Okay.
Sure.
I'm just making sure we're completely clear.
There
are only two exactly mutually exclusive propositions
of what actually exists.
Yes.
The question is what we know exists. Okay?
Sure. Fair enough.
That's
Fine.
a separate side of the question.
Fine. Now, it doesn't. If you then say, given that those mutually exclusive possibilities, if you then say the evidence for either one is identical, then there had better fucking not be some slight circumstantial evidence against one or the other, unless there's some slight circumstantial evidence against both. Because as soon as there is one, as soon as that is the case, that one or the other has some slight positive evidence, some slight negative evidence, some circumstantial evidence. As soon as that's true, then the statement that the evidence for each of them is identical is wrong.
You changed what you said.
What did I change?
And we can listen to that back later.
Okay.
What you said was, if I claim that the evidence for both of them is equivalent, which is what I've claimed, and then you went on to talk about evidence against a claim.
I don't see how it matters.
It does.
There is evidence regarding the two things.
That's the thing. You're changing the
But
framing
I'm just trying to clarify, because I don't think it matters. How come positive evidence matters and positive evidence matters and negative evidence doesn't matter?
That's the only thing that matters. If you're trying to prove a claim, you need evidence for it, not evidence against some opposing possibility.
But I'm not trying to prove that one is true. I'm reacting to your claim that the evidence is equal, and it's not. All right, Matt is now completely unfairly eliminated from the discussion because he got a phone call. So we'll set this aside. We can't declare anybody
bizarre.
The victor in this, and I will go on with the mail.
All right.
We were reading Angela's letter. I know, Matt, you got interrupted. Do you want to go on?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
The people in the chat room have been wanting us to get off this forever, but I haven't been able to look at it.
Okay. You and I should have more offline talk, and
absolutely.
I may well just be missing something. Okay. Angela continues, Matt, when you see your family at Thanksgiving, please tell them you will respect... No, she doesn't say please. I put that down. I'm sorry. Let me read it accurately. When you see your family at Thanksgiving, Matt, tell them you will respect their beliefs to the same extent that they respect yours. And if that doesn't work, ask them to please treat you nicely, since God can fight his own battles, being omnipotent and all, and besides, you would like to enjoy the time on earth you have left before you die and are punished for eternity. Plus, if God is omniscient, then he already knows how it's all going to end up, so it's arrogant for them to think they can influence the outcome. And what sort of all-loving entity creates people only to make them suffer forever. I'm not all-loving, but I would not have a child if I believed there was the remotest possibility that someone I created could suffer infinitely. So that's advice from Angela.
And I'm feeling good.